Hey, what's up, everybody? Steve Baskus here, and welcome to our first official show. It's a true honor to have this opportunity to interview Corporal Matthew Bradford. He's actually a good friend. Him and I spent some time in blind rehab together, reestablishing a new normal, a new life. So let's jump right in. Matt, it's great to have you here on the show. I'd like to ask you this first question. A lot of times I think about a service member's life and what they did before they served in the military, before they joined. What was your life like before joining the military? Where did you live? How did you grow up? Did you have a great family? Maybe start there.
So I was basically born in Virginia, but parents were divorced. My dad worked in the kind of DOD with a DECA defense commissaries, but my mom and all her family lived in Kentucky. So that's kind of where I was raised once they got a divorce when I was very young. But after 9/11, after September 11, 2001, the terrorist attacks happened. I moved back to live with my dad and ended up finishing high school in Virginia. But, growing up, I played sports from baseball to football to basketball. I was your typical kid. Like I was always outside. I never was indoors because there's a lot more happening outside than there was inside. But two different lifestyles. My dad was a government employee, had a good paycheck, but he grew up on a farm and he had 15 acres. And, he taught me a lot about just, work ethic and if I want something, then I'm going to work for it and I'm going to make my own money. It wasn't given to me. And, from my mom, who was basically paycheck to paycheck, I learned to be grateful and appreciate the smaller things in life, because I wasn't getting this, magnificent Christmas gift. It was maybe 3 or 4 items and that was it. But you learn to be grateful and appreciative that, she's working her tail off to get you everything she can. So like kind of growing up with two different lifestyles, two different, means of ways and means of life. And I think that helped out a lot. And it kind of helped me realize. And then, again, all of us, like once 9/11 happened, I knew what I needed to do. I knew what my purpose in life was, and it was to join the Marines or to join the military. I met with every recruiter, and then I just kind of, I got what I wanted from the Marine Corps recruiter, and did the delayed entry program December of my senior year in high school, and literally got the date. And, all I had to do was to graduate, give the recruiter my diploma, and then I was off to recruit training. So it was I'm just kind of, growing up playing sports, being a kid, just friends, social life. And then when it happened, when I graduated, it was on to the Marine Corps.
Absolutely. So would you say that the inspiration to serve in the Marine Corps or join the military was 9/11?
It was. And then, like when I moved to live with my dad, him working at Fort Lee, going to the mall on the weekends with my high school friends, and you see a lot of those Army soldiers, and then of course going to work with my dad, you're on the military base. So you kind of, you're introduced to it a lot more closer than I was in Kentucky. Because, in Kentucky, the reason why I moved to Virginia is because my mom was having issues. My brother was a partier, got into the drugs. Like there was no stability there for me at all. And if it wasn't for my dad stepping in to pull me to live with him in Virginia, then I don't know what route I would have chose, but I think, living with my dad, having that stability and being around the military as close as I was really helped me get in that direction. And, I had a couple of classmates that were in the same grade that they went into the buddy program in the Marine Corps as well. So, they influenced me as well.
Awesome. Can you talk about your role in the Marine Corps and maybe just any memorable moments that you can recall from serving in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, when I was looking at the military, like at first it was, Black Hawk Down came out, so Army Ranger is something I looked into, and then my dad was in the Air Force, so I looked in the Air Force, but I wanted to go to war. I wanted to fight, so I looked into the Air Force Special Forces, and their pipeline, their training was way too long. And then, of course, having the friends in high school and the Marine Corps recruiters, like I wanted to go to war. I wanted to fight, so I chose Marine Corps infantry. And I remember coming home from the MEP station, and my dad asked me, he was like, "You do know what infantry does?" And this was probably like 2 weeks after the second battle of Fallujah. The war was really hot then in Iraq, and it was just that was my whole goal. Like I wanted to go back and get those guys for that were responsible for 9/11. You know, the cool thing about, I think, the Marine Corps, and especially, going through it, is the guys that went to boot camp with me, went to School of Infantry with me, and they were pretty much in the fleet with me in Hawaii. Going through these schools and with them alongside familiar faces, you got to grow and you got to love those guys. And I've learned in the military, and the Marine Corps is such a small world. And my senior drill instructor, he told us about 2 or 3 weeks before we went off to School of Infantry, before we graduated boot camp. He says, once I'm done with you all, I'm off to Hawaii and you'll never see me again. Of course, he added a couple extra words in there, but you're being an East Coast Marine, you kind of figure you're going to be on the East Coast most of your time, and he's off in Hawaii, you'll never see him again. And the minute that we got to Hawaii, we find out that he's a platoon sergeant. And he's a platoon sergeant in the same company that we're in now. And I happened to be one of his last recruits to go see, to say hello to him or whatever. And as I was walking to the company office by myself one day, he was walking in the other direction. And I realized this is it, and I gave him the proper greeting of the day. And I keep on walking. And he's like, "Hey, Bradford." And I stop and turn around. He's like, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I'm like, "I do." And it was a scary moment when you're seeing one guy, that would literally murder you for 13 weeks. Now you're like, gosh, I never thought I'd see him again. And then the day of my injury, he was on QRF that day, and his voice was the last voice I heard before I passed out. And it's amazing to think that, like, some guy that, like, you would hope to get rid of and get out of your life, now has been such a valuable person, not only early on in the Marine Corps, but the last words he said to me before I passed out is, "You'll be fine, Bradford." So it's like those words I've lived on for the last 16 years, because when I'm down or when I'm struggling, like, I look at it that way. It's like, I'll be fine. I'll get through this. And it's amazing, what that Marine has done to me. Scared me to death, but also, like, he keeps me going every day.
Yeah, I understand. Sometimes I say small world, small war. When I was deployed too, I caught a glimpse of one of the drill instructors from our company, and I wasn't able to speak with them, but I know for sure it was one of our drill instructors. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what happened that day. The day that you were injured. You were serving in what part of the world?
I was in Iraq. I was up in Haditha, kind of the northwest part of the country, not too far from Syria, Al Anbar province. And January 18, 2007, we were at a point of deployment where it was starting to calm down a lot. The first 40 days of our deployment, we had a casualty a day. So we got, we hit the ground running, and we've dealt with a lot of, guys getting hurt. We had nine Marines in our company that got killed, 23 in the entire battalion, but we had over 150 Purple Hearts given out. But by the time January rolled around, we're less than 2 months from going home. The deployment was calmed down. Like, the work that we did over there, like, it was doing the job. And that's what, we were lead 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines. They I think they had 14 killed in action, and we had 23. But the work that we did over there, like, 1-3 who relieved us didn't take any casualties at all. And it's we lost a lot of blood there, but we went in there to an area that was just up the Euphrates River from Fallujah, Ramadi, and it was just kind of, Haditha was an area that just wasn't really messed with. They had their whole police unit get executed just a couple years, and then you had 3-1 go in there, and the whole Haditha massacre thing took place. So it was just, a town of people that didn't trust us. So you had to earn their trust, and you had to, also fight off the enemy, and let the people of Haditha know that we're there for them, and that was the big thing. But, we were on foot patrol, and, I honestly felt safer walking the streets than I did in vehicles, just because our mobile unit got hit so hard. And I was on point, and I saw, like, a white bag leaned up against a tree in the area called the Palm Groves, about probably 30 yards in front of me. And as I turn around and let everybody know about this white bag, because it's a suspicious item, be on the alert, look out for, ID or whatever. And I turned back around and I looked down, and there was this ditch that laid perpendicular from the road I was on that went inside of a pipe underneath the road. And And by that time, when I looked down, I was on top of it, and I saw the command wires going inside that pipe, and it pretty much exploded directly underneath me. It sent shrapnel into both my eyes. It removed my left leg. My right leg was, it wasn't removed, but it was severely damaged to where it had to be amputated later on. But kind of going in and out of consciousness, and the minutes that I was awake, to hear those Marines run around calling QRF to, because our squad got shot at and we engaged IEDs so much while we were over there. But when we left the FOB with 12 Marines, we always came back with 12 Marines. We dealt with it out in town, but we came back and we never really suffered an injury until that day. And, and then looking at me and what I dealt with that day, it's all those Marines didn't think I would make it. I lost pretty much a body's worth of blood, and my left leg was removed at the blast. I suffered abdominal injuries as well. My right hand was broken, left forearm, and of course the shrapnel that went through my left eye. And it ended up putting me in a coma for 3 weeks, waking up in Bethesda to find out truly what happened to me, where I was, and to begin this new life, and at that time it wasn't the life I wanted to live. I wanted to be a Marine. I wanted to deploy, and I looked at life as if I'm either going to come home with my brothers or not come home at all. Like there was just no middle down the road being wounded. I didn't want to be a disabled veteran. And so now I got to live with all that stuff. And it's been a journey, a lot of bad days in there, but a lot more good days. And, using those bad days as advice, as wisdom, and try not to turn one bad day into two is kind of how I look at life now.
I can absolutely relate with you, Matt. I mean, I was an infantryman in the U.S. Army, as you know, and different kind of situation in the sense of a blast injury. I was mounted, you were on foot, and just like you just stated, I wanted to serve, and if I was going to come home, it was not going to be maimed. I didn't. That was not on my mind. I thought it was coming home. I wasn't going to come home at all. If there was serious stuff that happened in theater.
Especially if for me, like you look on the news and you see these guys with amputations or burned or blind, and it's like you never think, never anticipate that happening to you, and it's just, we would walk out of the briefing room before every patrol, and the last thing that you'd pretty much see was we had like a whiteboard left of the door, and it had all the Marines on there that were wounded, their name, their rank, where they're at right now, their status. That was the last thing we really saw. And then, once we left our FOB, off to the left of the road, there was this unexploded ordnance that never exploded, of course, but it was just stuck into the ground, and it's like the two things that you see every time you left the FOB, but you just, at that time, you're going through your day to day. It's that the pace is so fast. You never think about it. You get into a gunfight, you get out of it, and you move on. Like you never think about getting wounded or what could happen or where you're going to go after that. I was saying, and like you, Steve, we were both kind of young, and it's like it was something else, that's for sure.
No, I was 22. I had just turned 22 when I was wounded. Everything you've mentioned, makes me think, what was going through your mind in the moments and days following your injury?
I know, like when I woke up from ICU and they put me on the 5th floor in Bethesda, and it's like, at that time my phantom pains in my legs were so severe. Like I still felt like I had feet, and then my dad would always come into the doctor or to my hospital room, and they'd always whisper behind me. So I'm like, at first I'm thinking, oh crap, I got kidnapped, and it's like they blindfolded me. Like my phantom pains are still strong enough to where I think I got feet. And then I remember my dad sitting down with me, and he told me that I lost both my legs, and it's likely I will never see again. And like I broke down. I cried right in his arms, because I wasn't worried about losing the eyesight. Like I just wanted my legs to be back. And like I was hoping that a tear or something like this, I would wake up from this nightmare. Because for me, although it was probably 4 or 5 weeks later, like to me in my mind, I felt like 10 minutes ago I was just in Iraq. Like we were walking down the street and everything was perfectly fine. But I just laid there in that hospital bed and I hated life. Like I tried to like find ways like, okay, if the IED didn't kill me, then I'm going to sit here and starve myself to death. And I got so skinny and weak, it was hard enough for me to even lift my head off the hospital bed. But, you know, it, because like, and then I like, all those times when I was down and when I just wanted to give up, like there's always like a chaplain or somebody would come into my hospital room and like early on, like I hated that. I was mean to everybody. But then like people kept coming back in my room. And, especially the Marines that worked at Bethesda, I realized then that, you know what? The IED like took so much from me, took my legs, took my eyesight, gave me these scars, but it didn't take the title of Marine. Like, the title of Marine, like never quit, never give up. Like I'm not fighting insurgents now. Like now I'm gonna be fighting these day-to-day obstacles, these demons, whatever gets thrown my way. This is what I'm fighting. And I had these Marines and I had these people coming in my hospital room to tell me that life is not over. And in my mind at that time, like the light started coming on that, yeah, like I don't have legs, I don't have eyesight, but I have a life and I can live it, and why can't I do what they're doing? Why can't I still wear the uniform and go in those hospital rooms to let people know that are struggling with their lives and their injuries that it's not over? Like you could still live a life, and especially like now, like I look at what you've done, Steve. I look at what we've all done, and we've all made this work. I'm sure we all struggle. We all have those bad days, but you're out there climbing mountains. I've done marathons. We've done this stuff. It's not easy, but we found ways. And from then on, from February of '07, like I wanted to reenlist. I wanted to stay in the Marines, and I knew it would take time. I knew it would take a lot of work and a lot of convincing to others, but I was going to do whatever it took, from learning how to walk to going to the blind rehab center to being strong enough and just being mentally ready for what was next. And that's what I did. Those 3 years I was in rehab, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and April 7th, 2010, I reenlisted in the Marines, and they asked me where I wanted to go, and it was Wounded Warrior Battalion, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, because I wanted to be around those who were struggling, who thought life was over, to let them know that it's not.
I think it's amazing, and I was always impressed by the Marine Corps for giving you that option and being truthful with you and honest with you. I mean, I don't know all the details, but I know that I really wanted to stay in, and I was not really ever provided any kind of strong answer because I felt like I could still be a resource, like you felt. And have even learned since, even more. And I relate to breaking down, in the bed. A good buddy died right next to me when I lost my sight. So when I heard about him and I heard about, my situation, it was just, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to return to my team. So, but you're right. I mean, teams have allowed us to accomplish so much, since our injuries, and it's such a great thing to have people that believe in you, and it's a two-way street. We put a lot of trust in other people.
Exactly, and that was my team leader to my left. Yeah, he was injured too, and I didn't realize that until I was in the hospital. And that was like one of the biggest things. Kind of like when you found out, it's like, oh man, I got him hurt. Like I felt responsible for all of that, and it's like even the times that he would call or the Marines from Iraq would try to call, like I didn't want to talk to any of them because I felt like I let them all down. And but yeah, it's just like I think too, like one of the so a couple of the Marines that I actually served with in Iraq in Echo Company was wounded a couple of months before I was injured, and they were in Bethesda, and one was shot in the head, and one was in a Humvee that got blown up, and you know I didn't trust too many people because I didn't know who these people were that kept coming in my room, but I knew who these two Marines were. I knew their names, and we followed their stories, and we were all in the same company. And when those two came into my room and those two spoke, I listened, and one of them lost a leg, and he was one of the ones that kind of helped me realize, okay, what is next for an amputee? Because I didn't know if I was ever going to walk again. I didn't know what was next. And he was the one that kind of helped paint the picture for me. And still today, he's probably one of my closest and best friends.
Well, that's my next question. Who was significant in your recovery and rehab?
Marcus Wilson and John McClellan were those two Marines. And then, once I got to Richmond, Virginia at the VA there, it's like people always ask, like, what was that one time or that one moment that kind of changed the whole path or journey? And it's like, I'm sure you're familiar, like you know about this too. It's just not just one, it's a lot of times, and it's you get shared so much wisdom and those nuggets of leadership and life and those lessons, and you take a little bit at a time, and to help you get through what you need to get through. And when I was in Richmond, Virginia, like I was still kind of in a little bit of the dark spot, but I was starting to get out. I was starting to move around a little bit better. I was starting to feel better. But every time I left the hospital room to go to therapy, like I'd always be in a wheelchair, and I'd always put my blanket over my lap because I use that blanket as a security blanket, because I realized, okay, if it's covering my amputations, then people can't see I don't have legs. And it gave me the courage to get out of my hospital bed, to get out of my hospital room and be around people. And the more I got comfortable being around people, because I understood that, why did I lose my legs? I lost my legs for the Marine Corps, for this country that I love. Like I shouldn't be depressed or disappointed. Like it was a choice that I made to sign my name on that line. But I did it for this country. I did it for freedom. This country gave me so much growing up, and I should be proud of that. And I slowly started taking that security blanket off, and it made me realize that, you know what, this is who I am. Like my legs aren't going to grow back unless there's some magical juice out there. This is who I am. And that was like one of the stories. Another one was a doctor I had in Richmond that he would come in my hospital room every day, and he would always blindfold himself or cover his eyes, because he's like, Matt, you can't see me, so I can't see you. And as I mentioned earlier about that trust, like this guy's putting himself in my shoes. He's not sitting there on his phone. He's not rushing home. He's putting himself in my shoes and kind of putting himself in my position, just for the 5, 10, 15-minute conversation we're about to have. And it helped me open up to him a little bit more. And then, I got to San Antonio, and I was in a burn hospital. I wasn't burned at all, but I was around soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen that were injured significantly more and worse than I was. And you would never know it, because they're joking, they're laughing, they're having a good time. They're there for each other. And I looked at that and I'm like, if these guys aren't, you got to realize in life that people have it way worse than you, but they're still living life. Like I don't have nothing to be depressed about. I'm one of those. He was a Marine at one time, and then he switched to the Army, and he was burned probably 70+% of his body. He couldn't even open his Gatorade bottle. And I had lunch with him one day, and he says, Matt, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you stay so motivated and positive, because I'd much rather be burned than blind. And that's like stuck with me, since 2007. And it's just like, these guys have it way worse, and he's going to be going in and out of surgeries for the rest of his life. But he was there when I stood up for the first time, cheering me on. And it's just, my physical therapist. And it's just, my mindset was to go to therapy every day with a smile on my face. Do what I need to do to put prosthetics on, because I wanted to reenlist, and I knew getting to that point, I had to get stronger. I had to learn how to walk. And then, once I figured out the walking, that would make the whole blind rehab a little bit easier, because I have legs now. And it was just creating those goals in my head and not letting people tell me, you should just get out, you should just retire. Like, it's what I wanted to do. It was my life. And that's what I focused on throughout my recovery. I enjoyed it, and got to meet a lot of fantastic, phenomenal people, and it's some aren't in my life today, but there's a lot still here. And when I need them, I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and reach out.
It's an amazing mindset, Matt. And I understand, throughout time, throughout your recovery, you've built on things and just your experiences. I guess Do you believe that the mindset, the philosophy you have now was because of the Marine Corps, or did something exist within you even before the Marine Corps, or a bit of both? Like, what do you attribute, that kind of drive and mental fortitude to?
I think it's always been there, just growing up playing sports and, kind of, when I was living with my mom, kind of having that, like, especially later in my life when she was going through her situations that, I had to learn to take care of myself, and then moving with my dad and him teaching me that work ethic. But, what kept me alive is being a Marine. It's like not letting those demons or these injuries defeat me, because I felt like if I gave up, then I gave up on those Marines that are still fighting overseas. And I feel like that was the driving force behind it all. Um, I just I look at the mindset now, and I'm sure you're probably the same way. Like everything I do today is because of those who didn't make it home. When I get on a hand cycle, when I get on an upright bike and I'm in a Spartan race, like I always wear a Kevlar because I wear a Kevlar to honor those who can't wear it anymore. It's uncomfortable, it's a burden, but you know what? It puts me back in the fight with those I love. It gets those guys back here today, and they're walking alongside me, and that drives me every day. And I put my uniform on. I make sure that everything's in the right spot, because there's a lot of guys and there's a lot of girls can't wear that uniform no more that would do anything just to put it on. Like it's just those are my heroes, and everything I do today is for them, and that's my drive.
It's amazing, man. What what kind of goals or aspirations do you have for the future?
I told myself when I first got hurt that I'm going to live a normal life despite my injuries. Like I might do it a little differently, but I'm going to get it done. And so I've got out of the Marines in 2012. My next chapter was to go to college. I graduated from University of Kentucky. I was going to go back and pursue a master's, and then COVID happened, so I didn't want to deal with all that stuff at that time. But I do believe like that's in my future. I do marathons, the Marine Corps Marathon. I'm getting ready to do a century ride next month down here in Kentucky, 100-mile bike ride upright tandem bike. I do work with Troops First Foundation, and we go out and speak on military bases and installations about resiliency, connectivity, and suicide, because that's a battle we're all facing today. Not only the military, the veteran community, but even civilians. COVID really shot those numbers up, and just trying to reach out to our service members and to let them know that nobody knows you better than the person to your left and right, and nobody thinks any less of you or thinks you're weak because you want to go to a counselor or a therapist or get help. I talk to a counselor, talk to him yesterday, twice a week, and I don't feel any less of a man because I do that. But it's just I just God gave me that second chance to live life, and I'm going to live it to its fullest. Like I don't know what's next. I try not to look too far into the future. I just try to focus on what's right now. Loving my family and doing what I can to help those around me. And it's I got some wild goals. I do want to get on a tandem bike and bike across the country one day. I don't know. I'm getting a little older now, but I just love life. If it's just getting out and just living it. And being around those that make me happy.
I understand, Matt. I have a saying, moving is living. And, I stare into a still, dark world. So when I get out and do things, I feel like, I feel like I'm living, life and experiencing life and enjoying it with people. I think,
And like with you as well, I'm sure, we've been at this for 16, 17 years now, and our vision on life is a lot greater than some other people, sadly. And it's like I might look at darkness same as you, and it's like, but you know what, it seems like the light's pretty bright.
I absolutely agree, man. Yeah, I often think about that when I'm in the company of someone who is seriously depressed or hurting. And but for me, it's just trying to be a good example. just live hard, do great things, and try to help those you can, just like we were taught in the military, you know.
Ronald Reagan has one of my favorite quotes is, "We can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone." And it's I forgot what it was, like 7 or 8 years ago, and I did like an event, and it was I put it on social media. I typed up this post and just being grateful for this life and all this stuff, that despite what happened to me, you make the best of the situation. And this lady somehow found my personal email and sent me an email and was like, she's like, "You don't know me, and we'll probably never meet, but I'm a huge fan of." It was a Toby Keith event. "I'm a huge fan of Toby Keith, and when I read your post, I Googled your name and I saw how you live life. And if it wasn't for me reading that, then I would have committed suicide." And it's like, it doesn't matter if they're close to you, if you talk to them every day, like someone's watching, someone's out there that's hurting. And if you could be a positive influence in their life, then you never know, you could be saving lives.
I have heard similar things and felt similar things, Matt, over time. And that's why it's so important to lead and try to be a good example, even in your hardest times. We're taught that in the military. You don't get a timeout when the going gets tough. You just have to keep pushing. I think my final question, Matt, for you, and you've really provided a lot of wisdom already, is, what kind of message do you have for other veterans that are facing similar challenges, or just people in general?
I think the one thing with any veteran, anyone that's served in the military, the leadership that we learned can be carried even when you take the boots off. To go back to your communities, to be a stand-up citizen. It kills me sometimes to read a story because this guy got back and DUI, or he's not he gets out of the military and just turns into a complete troublemaker. Like, because it's like all of us can be a stand-up citizen. It's just using what we learned in the military, the leadership, and carrying that through everything. It's the importance of leadership. I do stuff with my high school football team, and it's not so much leadership on the football field, but it's being a leader in life and the importance of leadership. I think that's important, and it's and also, the one thing that we try to preach with the troops first when we talk about suicide and warrior call and stuff like that is being there for your fellow veteran, for your fellow service member, picking up the phone, checking in on them, calling them, make sure they're okay. And if they are struggling or having a difficult day, be that resource or provide the resources to them. It's I know a lot of veterans, a lot of people just want to like distance themselves and get away from everyone else, but it's we all need each other, and we all need to be there for each other and look out for each other, because it is a tough world we're living in today. It's a hard world, but nobody understands us better than a veteran. And take advantage of those people you have in your life, create that strong circle, and if somebody doesn't support you, if they're not going to be there when you need them the most, if they're not going to be there at 2 a.m. to pick up that phone, then remove them from your life. It's like, have that strong support system that you can trust.
Thanks for the great message, Matt. It's a true honor to have you on the show, and I'm sure many people will benefit from your words. I know that you do lots of interviews and you meet lots of people.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the episode today. It was a true honor to speak with Corporal Matthew Bradford. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to sbaskis@bva.org. That's SBASKIS@bva.org. And just a final reminder, please subscribe to the podcast and share it on your favorite social media platform. Until next time, this is Steve Baskis signing out. You're listening to a BVA production.